What if you destroyed an enemy tank, watched it burn, and then faced the exact same machine in battle 2 days later? For German soldiers in Normandy, this wasn't a nightmare. It was a terrifying reality that shattered their morale and revealed the secret weapon they never saw coming. July 12th, 1620 hours. Near St. Lo, Normandy. The acrid smell of burnt propellant and superheated steel hung heavy in the humid air, a foul incense of industrial warfare. From the concealed dugout, Lieutenant Klaus Richter lowered his field glasses, the rubber cups leaving faint impressions around his eyes. A grim, professional satisfaction settled in his gut. His Panzerjäger crew had performed with the cold precision he demanded. The American M4 Sherman, caught traversing a narrow gap in the suffocating hedgerow, now sat askew in the dirt road. A thick column of greasy black smoke coiling lazily from its open commander's hatch. It was a perfect shot. A clean penetration of the side armor by the high-velocity shell from their 7.5 centimeters. POC 40. Richter noted the crude white star painted on its turret, now partially obscured by a distinctive jagged gash in the applique armor plate just below it, a scar from some previous, less fatal encounter. He made a meticulous note in his logbook, a habit born of years on the Eastern Front, marking the tank's position and its unique visual identifier. It was the third Sherman his gun had brewed up that week. For a fleeting moment, the grim mathematics of attrition, the one equation that still gave the Wehrmacht a fighting chance, felt like they were on the German side. One shell, one kill, a fair exchange. 2 days later, the morning broke with a damp, clinging mist that shrouded the Norman countryside in a ghostly silence. It was a silence Richter did not trust. It was soon broken by a familiar, menacing vibration that resonated not in the ears, but deep in the chest cavity, the telltale rumble of an American armored advance. As his crew readied their gun, its long barrel still hidden by camouflage netting, Richter raised his glasses to scan the line of Shermans emerging like gray behemoths from the mist. His breath caught in his throat. His blood ran cold. One of the lead tanks, its 75mm cannon already traversing towards their suspected position, bore the unmistakable, crudely painted white star. And just below it, like a horrific signature, was the jagged, dark gash in the side armor. It was impossible. He had watched it burn. He had seen the crew bail out, their uniforms alight. He had logged its destruction, yet here it was, its tracks churning the Norman mud, its coaxial 30 caliber machine gun spitting tracers that stitched the earth just meters in front of their emplacement. The psychological impact was more devastating than any artillery shell. This was not a new tank shipped from a factory overseas. This was a ghost, a phantom that had risen from its own grave to fight again. In that single, sickening moment of recognition, Klaus Richter understood they were not fighting an army of men and machine, but a foe that did not seem to obey the fundamental laws of destruction. The predator had become the prey, haunted by the specter of its own victim. What he and his men were witnessing was not merely the appearance of an enemy tank, but the beginning of the complete demolition of their worldview. The simple, brutal arithmetic of war, the one constant a soldier could rely on, had been catastrophically inverted. What Lieutenant Richter witnessed was not a supernatural event, but the functioning of a system so mundane, so logical, and so overwhelmingly effective that it appeared miraculous to those condemned to face it. The ghost on the Bocage Road was not an apparition. It was the doctrine of the U.S. Army Ordnance Department made manifest in steel and grease. The true weapon that systematically demolished the Wehrmacht's morale was not the Sherman tank itself, but the sprawling, invisible industrial ecosystem designed to keep it fighting. This system was built on a simple, revolutionary philosophy that the German high command, steeped in a tradition of aristocratic warfare, could never fully comprehend. A damaged tank was not a loss, but a temporary deficit waiting to be corrected. The Americans had extended the assembly line from the factories of Detroit to the very edge of the battlefield itself. This process was a masterpiece of systemic thinking, divided into 5 echelons of maintenance. While the first echelon was the tank crew itself, performing basic repairs like clearing a jammed gun or tightening a loose track pin. The true power, the engine of resurrection, lay in the echelons behind them, just miles from the fighting, often within earshot of artillery. The skilled mechanics of ordnance maintenance battalions, men who were auto mechanics, welders, and factory workers just months before operated with an efficiency that defied German conception of field repair. Armed with immense M32 tank recovery vehicles, powerful wreckers built on a Sherman chassis and equipped with booms and winches, they would venture onto still-hot battlefield, often under fire, to retrieve the fallen. A tank with a thrown track, a damaged engine, or a compromised gun was not abandoned to rust. It was hooked, dragged back to a collection point, and systematically resurrected in makeshift field workshops set up in ruined French farms. Engines could be swapped in under 4 hours. Damaged bogie assemblies were unbolted and replaced with fresh ones from a seemingly infinite supply. The American philosophy of standardized, interchangeable parts meant a tank was less a singular entity and more a modular collection of components. The mathematics of this system were inexorable and brutal. It was infinitely faster and cheaper to repair a damaged tank in a Norman field than to build a new one in America and ship it 3,000 miles across a hostile ocean. During the height of the Normandy campaign, ordnance units were returning over 70% of damaged medium tanks to combat, many within 24 to 48 hours. The phantom army that haunted the German Panzerjäger was real, and its ranks were being replenished not by convoys from the sea, but by the grime-stained hands of mechanics working every single night. They were fighting an industrial hydra. For every head they severed, 2 more seemed to reappear by the next dawn, their cannons already seeking a target. The war of attrition the Germans believed they were winning was a catastrophic illusion, a profound failure to understand the nature of their enemy. They were counting kills, while the Americans were counting repairs. The German approach to armored warfare was a study in profound and ultimately fatal contrasts, where the Americans valued serviceability and mass production. The German industrial military complex revered technological perfection and artisan craft. The Panther and Tiger tanks were masterpieces of engineering, possessing sloped armor and high-velocity cannons that were qualitatively superior to almost anything the Allies could field. On a one-to-one basis, they were magnificent predators, but they were also fatally complex, brittle instruments of war. Each tank was a finely tuned machine, a work of industrial art that required a watchmaker's precision to maintain. This very philosophy, which produced such formidable killing machines, also ensured their inevitable extinction from the battlefield. A German tanker's greatest enemy was often not an Allied anti-tank gun, but his own transmission. The infamous interleaved Schachtel-Laufwerk road wheel system of the Tiger and Panther, while providing excellent weight distribution and a smoother ride, was a maintenance nightmare that perfectly encapsulated this flawed design philosophy, replacing a single damaged inner road wheel. A common occurrence for mine, damage, or simple mechanical failure, often required the removal of multiple outer wheels first. It was a painstaking process that could consume an entire crew for a full day, often exposing them to artillery fire or air attack. A failure of the Panther's final drive, a notoriously common and catastrophic event, was an industrial disaster in the field, requiring specialized heavy lifting equipment and factory-level expertise to repair. These were not fixes that could be made in a muddy Norman field under the threat of Jabo fighter bombers. A captured German maintenance manual from the Panzer Lehr Division noted that the projected man-hours required to replace a Panther's transmission were over 20 times that required for a Sherman's power pack. The numbers told an undeniable story of systemic fragility. Consequently, A damaged Panther or Tiger was often a total write-off unless it could be meticulously recovered and transported by rail all the way back to a depot in Germany. The Wehrmacht, fighting on dwindling resources and with its logistical arteries under constant air attack, could simply not afford the American system of battlefield recovery and forward repair. Their logistical chain was a one-way street from the factory to the front. There was no return trip for the critically wounded. Every complex mechanical failure, every thrown track that could not be immediately fixed, meant another ghost was created, but this was a ghost that would never return to haunt the battlefield. It was simply gone. The German war machine was hemorrhaging its most precious assets, not just to enemy fire, but to the inescapable friction of war and the hubris of its own engineering. The full, catastrophic impact of this systemic disparity became brutally clear in late July 1944, during the massive American breakout, codenamed Operation Cobra, preceded by a carpet-bombing campaign of unimaginable ferocity that pulverized elite German units like the Panzer Lehr Division. American armored columns shattered the German lines and poured into the French interior. German units, what was left of them, were forced into a desperate, chaotic retreat. In their wake, they left a trail of abandoned armor, not just the blackened, twisted hulks of total combat losses, but dozens of Panthers, Panzer IVs, and Stug assault guns immobilized by mechanical failure, minor combat damage, or simply a lack of fuel. For the retreating Panzer divisions, these vehicles were gone forever, casualties of a logistical system that had completely collapsed. For the advancing Allies, they were a harvest. Allied ordnance collection companies, the unsung heroes of the logistical corps, swarmed the battlefields in the wake of the advance. Their M32 wreckers operating around the clock in a vast, organized campaign of battlefield salvage. Their primary mission was the recovery of American armor, which was repaired and fed back into the spearheads of Patton's Third Army with an astonishing speed that maintained the momentum of the breakout. But they also hauled away the German wrecks. This practice served two critical purposes. First, it denied the Germans any chance of recovering their own vehicles should they manage to mount a local counterattack, a psychological blow that erased any hope of reversing their losses. Second, it provided a massive source of battlefield intelligence for Allied technical teams and a seemingly endless supply of high-quality steel for the foundries back home. The mathematics of this one-sided recovery effort were devastating. A post-war interrogation of Oberst Meinrad von Lauchert, commander of the 2nd Panzer Division, revealed the profound psychological impact of this industrial reality. We would knock out 5, perhaps 6 Shermans to lose 1 Panther. He stated, his voice devoid of pride, but the next day, the 5 or 6 Shermans were always back, and our Panther was gone forever. We were fighting a hydra that grew new heads faster than we could cut them off. The feeling was one of utter futility. Our victories were temporary, but our losses were permanent. The numbers from the campaign told the entire story. After the Battle of the Bulge, the last major German offensive, Allied salvage units recovered and repaired over 2,000 of their own damaged armored vehicles, returning them to the fight. The Germans, in their long retreat, recovered almost none of their catastrophic losses. The hunters had not only become the hunted, they had become the scavenged. Their finest creations now, raw material for the very war machine that was systematically destroying them. The phantom army that haunted Lieutenant Richter and systematically broke the will of the Wehrmacht was the ultimate expression of the American philosophy of war. It was the physical proof that victory in the 20th century would be decided not by the qualitative superiority of a nation's weapons, but by the depth, resilience, and regenerative capacity of its industrial system. The Germans had built magnificent predatory machines, each a testament to engineering genius. The Americans had built a system of relentless resurrection, This was the fundamental, catastrophic disparity that decided the war on the Western Front. The Axis saw tanks where they should have seen logistical chains. They counted cannons where they should have counted mechanics. They measured armor thickness where they should have measured the velocity of their enemy's supply and repair echelons. In the end, this was a war between two entirely different conceptions of power. The German model was that of the master blacksmith, forging a single perfect sword that, once broken, was lost forever. The American model was that of the modern surgeon, capable of repairing battlefield trauma and sending the wounded soldier back into the fight, often stronger and more experienced than before. The thunder of the American advance across France was not just the sound of tank engines and cannons, it was the roar of an industrial philosophy that had mastered not only creation, but regeneration. It was the sound of a democratic society that viewed industrial capacity not as a tool to serve the military, but as the very heart of military power itself. The German soldier, staring in disbelief at a tank he knew he had killed, was not seeing a ghost. He was seeing the future of warfare, a future in which abundance, serviceability, and systematic recovery had rendered his own legendary bravery and his nation's engineering prowess tragically obsolete. His profound psychological trauma came from the dawning realization that the rules of war, as he understood them, had been irrevocably changed without his consent. He had learned, on the wrong end of a resurrected 75mm cannon, the final, brutal lesson of industrial warfare, that it is won not by the side that inflicts the most death, but by the side that can most efficiently defy it. The Phantom Army was not a myth, it was a system. It proved that victory in modern war is forged not only in the fires of production, but in the grime and grease of forward maintenance. This was the ultimate expression of industrial democracy, a system that valued every machine capable of turning catastrophic loss into a temporary setback. For the soldiers who faced these resurrected machines, the psychological damage was permanent, a ghost of industrial might that would haunt them long after the shooting stopped. If this deep dive into the hidden systems of warfare fascinates you, don't forget to subscribe to Content Channel and hit the notification bell for more analysis that goes beyond the battlefield. Thank you for watching Content Channel.